Hi, hello. Welcome to the episode of Isaiah's Newsstand. It's your host, Isaiah Edwards. The date is June the 22nd, 2026. Hopefully, this episode finds you well, in good spirits, and high hopes. As for me, I'm doing pretty good. Happy Monday, happy Garfield Day. Hopefully, you got that lasagna. Hopefully, you got some wine on the side, maybe some garlic bread, maybe some seconds. You're hungry. You deserve it. No, but for me, for mine, it's been a good day. Let's see. We can just kind of start from the tippity top of the day. I guess we can start with a back update. I'm still in pain. There's still that. I will say at this point, I'm feeling a bit better. But at the top of the day, I was just like kind of laying in bed and I kind of had that like moment of like, oh, I guess it's not as bad as it was, yesterday. Maybe we're going to be, a bit better. It's going to be fine. Then I got up. Ooh, and it just started, my back just started barking. And I was like, okay, so it's going to be a rough day. Okay, all right. But as I got myself together and then, I got in the car, winced a little bit, got myself to work, kind of started, getting going, it was manageable. I've definitely noticed it throughout the whole day. I'd say it's ranged anywhere from like a 3 at the very worst, kind of the top of the day, to like right where we're at now, which is around a 1 or so, 1.5. So that's good. That's fine. I'll take it. And, in the history of my back injuries, this isn't so bad. So I'll take it. But overall, work was good. It was solid. Really wasn't as much work as I'd like to see on a Monday. I'll say that, which is a weird thing to say. But, I like to be in, in my position, down at the crusher, mashing the trash. So when I run out, it's kind of a bummer, having to go upstairs and do a bunch of putbacks. Though, granted, I usually don't do more than like 30 minutes to an hour. So I'm not really too upset about that. Then I, came back down, worked a little bit more cardboard, and then I got out of there. So that it was overall, good day. 2 thumbs up. Despite the old back, I did go to the gym, of course. You know me, you know how I gets down. And, for a Monday, it wasn't too bad. I was able to get a free bench and just kind of did, kind of a bevy of exercises. I think that's the right word, whatever. Overall felt pretty good, given the injury, given the back pain, it was manageable, and dare I say maybe even helped a little bit. I don't know. Sometimes that can happen where I'll have an injury, I'll have a soreness, a tightness, and like just doing some work actually kind of like reactivates the area in like a good way. But I will say I didn't hit back too hard. But yeah, we got that done. We got our core work done. We got our cardio work in. It felt pretty good. So post that, I came home, did a bit of stretching, had my snack. I did some research, but I will also add I had a bit of just a little bit of me time. I don't know. I just maybe it was the back pain or whatever. I just kind of sat and kind of got a little contemplative. AKA, I just watched some live streams and just kind of hung out while I researched a little longer than usual. So, that was nice. But yeah, overall, we are good to go now. I peeled myself away from Twitch TV. And yeah, let's go ahead and do our startup and let's get into the news. All right. We got a good slew of stories to cover today, I'd say. Okay. Our first story comes from The Guardian. Bolivian president declares state of emergency and deploys military to quell anti-government protests. Bolivia's president declared a state of emergency on Saturday and deployed soldiers and bulldozers to raise anti-government roadblocks that have paralyzed the country. For more than 6 weeks, unions, indigenous groups, and coca farmers have marched through cities and blocked roads across the country with rubble, logs, and debris in protest against the conservative government. Major cities have suffered acute shortages of fuel, food, and medicine. The economy has lost billions of dollars, and the protests have threatened to topple Bolivia's first non-socialist government in over 2 decades. The president, Rodrigo Paz, appeared in a pre-dawn televised address on Saturday to warn protesters they would face the full force of the law as he moved to end the crisis. He declared a 90-day state of emergency, which curbs the right to protest and allow the military to be deployed domestically. Hours after his address, AFP reporters in the city of El Alto saw squads of soldiers and armed police moving in a convoy as bulldozers moved in to clear roadblocks. Some residents clapped as they passed. One man handed a bag of bread to a police officer riding in the back of a pickup truck, which I'm like, I mean, I guess it's supposed to be a nice gesture. Like he's literally on the job, busting heads and shit. And you're like, hey, here's some bread, buddy. Thanks for doing that for us. I don't know why I gave them an American bumpkin accent, but I did, whatever. Sorry. I'm very happy. Carla Butron, a 39-year-old shopkeeper, told AFP. Everything has been difficult here in El Alto during these 50-some days work-free movement. In nearby La Paz, military, police, and Navy personnel guarded the presidential palace, and police tactical units were stationed on main squares. Bolivians cannot continue to be held hostage by blockades that prevent them from working, studying, receiving medical care, getting supplies, and bringing food to their homes, Paz said in a social media post. Even though I feel like people were coming out because they weren't getting the things that they needed. And, well, really, it's about the economy. But, you're not able to get the things that you need. The state of emergency is not intended to take away normalcy, but to restore it. Let's see here. The protesters want La Paz to abandon liberal economic reforms and step down, less than a year after he was elected. The 58-year-old had signaled he was ready to negotiate earlier this week agreed to a deal with one of the country's major unions to end the crisis. In exchange for a promise not to privatize state companies and hold further talks, the Bolivian Workers' Central Union agreed to end their protests. But some indigenous groups vowed to fight on, and more than 40 major roadblocks remain. So you got to give credit at least to the union for sure for saying, hey, if we can get some kind of deal that's something that, slows this creep, this power creep, if you will, from the right in terms of like privatization and things like that, then good. That's something of, I guess you could say, a silver lining. But I obviously understand, too, why indigenous groups are saying, no, we're not getting enough here. We want what we want. We want what we asked for. And typically, I think that kind of happens when you have a protest, whether we're talking right, left, whatever. It's like you do give them a bit, and it's like, yeah, we want what we want, and we're seeing that this is working. So you can understand how the mentality kind of, continues to kind of surge forth, and essentially, you have Paz saying, well, no, I'm gonna put the kibosh on this now. Let's see. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. On the road to La Paz, truck driver Eric Richard Segovia, 49, was hoping to make it to Santa Cruz further east. They abandoned us on the road. We have to wait. Now at least we're seeing the traffic starting to get back to normal. So, I mean, they're, surveying and talking to, other people on the street who are like, wanting to just go back to their normal. They don't want to see these blockades. And I completely fucking get it. We've talked about this before when it comes to any kind of protest or strike or anything like that, where people are like, hey, I might be with the people to some extent or maybe not, whatever. But at the end of the day, I just want to be able to get to my job and then get back home. And I can't do that when in this situation, there's a whole ass fucking blockade, in my way. So, I want that to be gone. I want my government to do something about that. So, I get that. I understand that. Paz has accused narco-terrorists, and in particular, former President Evo Morales, of being behind the road blocking protests. Morales, a leftist firebrand, indigenous leader, and former coca farmer, was president from 2006 to 2019. He is in hiding while facing charges of alleged trafficking of a minor, which he denies. His stronghold is in the Chapari region in central Bolivia, which is now a potential flashpoint. I believe Morales, like that situation, was maybe our entry point into Bolivia, I feel like. That's like the last time I remember talking about this area, at least. So, I saw this story, or at least I heard about it when I was listening to the BBC on the way to work, and I said, okay, I'll go ahead and cover it for the pod. We'll start off there. But we're going to move on. Keeping it in Latin America, or not Latin America, Latin area, my bad. Excuse me, mea culpa. Lo siento? Whatever. From the BBC. Trump-backed political outsider wins political election. Initial count shows. Right-wing candidate, I'm totally gonna fuck this up. Abelardo de Espriella has nearly won Colombia's presidential election. An initial vote count shows, marking a dramatic shift in how the government will tackle the country's internal armed conflict and violence. De la Espriella was endorsed by Donald Trump, and has pledged a military crackdown on illegal armed groups, drug trafficking, and crime. He appeared to defeat left-wing Ivan Cepeda, a close ally of President Gustavo Petro. De la Espriella said today begins a new stage for our country, a stage built on free and democratic will of millions of citizens who chose to believe in a great, safe, prosperous Colombia full of opportunities. With over 99% of the votes counted, De La Espriella had won nearly 49.7% of the vote, while Cepeda won 48.7%, according to an initial count of the runoff election. Cepeda has not conceded, saying the preliminary count was not yet official or binding. Which I get, especially when you see that the numbers are that close. You're gonna wait until all the ducks are in a row, and if there is any kind of like political, subterfuge or election sabotage, whatever, you're gonna want to investigate that. I get it. But I'm just as an American, I'm just so burnt out from that kind of shit that, I tend to just say if the motherfucker won, they won. Maybe we'll find out in post that some shit was rigged or not. I don't know. But I just kind of shrug my shoulders and say, hey, the people talked. The people went out and they voted and they wanted a change. Do I agree with the changes all the time? No, I don't. But it just is what it is. Because, I would rather have seen Cepeda won. But I guess in this situation, we have to make way for the tiger. El tigre, el tigre. So he is now going to be in power. It's looking like. I believe he is a political outsider. He was a lawyer, if I'm not mistaken. I'm kind of wanting to get into Isaiah mode here. Here we can just read from here. De La Espriella is a lawyer and businessman with no prior political experience. As a lawyer, his clients included Alex Saab, an ally of Venezuela's ousted President Nicolas Maduro, who faces U.S. charges of money laundering, and David Murcia Guzman, one of Colombia's biggest fraudsters. He has said this was part of his job as a defense lawyer. He has drawn comparisons with El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele for his security policies and even the style of his beard. Okay, I guess they have similar beards going on. There's something about this guy where it's giving like Bolsonaro. I almost wanted to compare him to Milei, but Milei is kind of his own character. He is his own type of zany. But yeah, there's definitely the Nayib Bukele. It feels pretty one-to-one there. So that's probably what we're going to be getting out of a guy like this. That's kind of where he's probably going to be trying to take Colombia. Is that something that's really surprising to me to be covering? No. I've said this before, kind of looking, internationally and stuff. You see a lot of people, kind of responding positively, which is weird to say, but like responding positively to our idea of like a populist like Trump. it's not something I like seeing or saying, but it's like, you just have this resonance where it's like, no, we want a strong man. We want someone who's going to tell us what we want to hear and then make it happen. And then when you don't get that wish fulfillment, you go, it was actually, the radical left or the people on the other side. They're doing this to us. They're stopping us from being great, making Colombia great again, or whatever the fuck. It just kind of just rolls with a certain kind of people. And once that kind of wave gets started, it's just, I guess it's hard to put out. I mean, there's still people in Argentina who are still fucking with Malay, I feel like, for similar reasons, even though shit's, still hard and still not really working. I mean, I guess economically, maybe that's debatable. I've heard that, like, in some ways there's progress, but overall, for people at a ground level, they're like, I'm not seeing my needs met still. Things are still very expensive for me. It is still way too hard to live. What the fuck is up? So, I mean, I don't know. I never wish that for any country. So we will see if Colombia really has any, dramatic improvement. But yeah, let's see here. Is there anything else I really wanted to cover? They go through, like, more, history of Colombia, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. So yeah, we'll say that for the diehards if you want to read that, by all means. But we're gonna move on. This is my story. This is my story for the day. I think this one. It's for me. It's a Happy Trails. We love a Happy Trails, and this is coming out of the fucking Great Britain, jolly old London. Let me take a little quick water break, and then let's go to CBS News, and we gotta say goodbye to old Starmer. Happy trails to you until we meet again. No, anyway. All right. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announces resignation. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced Monday that he was resigning from his position as leader of the ruling Labour Party, which will also see him replaced as the country's leader. Starmer has been under mounting pressure to resign for weeks, following a disastrous round of local elections for his party in early May. But his decision came after a political rival from within Labour, former Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, made it clear that he would challenge the Prime Minister for his job. So, a bit of a correction. I didn't know exactly where he was mayor of. It was Manchester, and his name was Andy Burnham. But yeah, he's the guy who was coming down, like, on some King Arthur shit to, like, I guess, take the throne. Well, take the Prime Minister position. Sausage Finger still got that shit locked down. Starmer had vowed to stay in his post, but his position became untenable as more and more Labour Party colleagues concluded his time was up. The timetable for his departure sped up after Burnham left his role as mayor and then won a seat last week as a member of parliament for his local constituency. A necessary move as prime ministers have long been chosen from among sitting members of the House of Commons. It marks the end of a tumultuous reign for Starmer less than 2 years after his Labour Party was swept to power in a resounding national election, and less than 2 months after voters made their frustration with his handling of national affairs clear in a local round of elections. Yeah, I remember we covered the Peter Mandelson shit, and like right around that time, people were like, this guy has to go. Keir Starmer has to go. Like, he's the reason this guy was in. There's no way he wouldn't have known. And they tried to, like, offer up his, like, one of Keir Starmer's subordinates and say, oh, no, this is the guy who put him in the room with me. And I didn't know better. I thought this shit was all sorted out and it wasn't this deep. Yada, blah, blah, blah. But that was just, like, the big death knell. I think up until that point, people were not satisfied with what the Labour Party was offering, which is essentially just Tory light bullshit. Like, this was supposed to be the great big moment for the Labour Party, and they just landed flat as fuck, stale as hell, providing nothing for people, doing nothing, serving no one but themselves, really. And essentially, you just see them treading water. So, with Burnham, I don't know. I don't know shit for fuck about this guy, but nothing I've heard so far has seemed any, like, different or impressive. So you still have the UK Reform Party. You have Nigel Farage chomping at the bit, yelling, wishing, hoping that we could just have, general elections now. That's just not how it works. It's not until, like, I think 2029. And then you have the Greens on the other end of that, on the left, saying, like, yeah, we would like to see something new. We would like a chance at it. We would love that. A real crack at something progressive, maybe something, actual worthy of change. And then you have the Tories being like, Yeah, they should just stop lollygagging, and we should get this new guy in like right here, right now, so we can yell at him and put everything on him. Like, I do love that the Tories just really do. Also, just like the Labor Party, have nothing to offer, nothing to say or do. I imagine if you really like, charge them to say or do something, they would just do something a little bit lighter than whatever the Reform Party be saying, like, it's the immigrants or something. So, the shit really is a mess over there in the UK. It gives me at least some solace that they're, just as in the shit as we are in America. I guess you could say, in a way. We're not too different, them and us. So that's fun, jolly good. So yeah, I do, cover this with a smile. It looks like another prime minister is biting the dust. Man, it is getting to the point. I feel like if it stays at this clip, we're gonna have more prime ministers than we've had like overall avatars in the history of the last Airbender. So I mean that's fun. That's great. I love that. Anyway, we can go ahead and move on. I really don't have much else to add about it. We'll see what happens in the coming days, weeks. Our next story, though, we're doing hashtag boat watch. We're back. It's unfortunate. It's grim. I'm trying to add some levity to the fuckery that we're doing as Americans. From NBC News. U.S. strike on an alleged drug boat kills 2, leaves 6 survivors in Eastern Pacific Ocean. The U.S. military has conducted another strike against a boat accused of smuggling drugs in the Eastern Pacific Ocean on Thursday, immediately killing 2 people and leaving 6 survivors amid an ongoing campaign against alleged traffickers in Latin America. The latest attack, which now number more than 60, brings the number of people who have been killed in the boat strikes by the U.S. military to more than 210 since the Trump administration began targeting those it calls narco-terrorists in early September. Second time we've used that term in this episode. I love that. I like that. Because once, I've said this before, I'll say it fucking again. Once you get to the point where you're calling a person, a group, an organization, whatever the fuck you're trying to, destroy, a terrorist, you are essentially giving yourself a blank check to do whatever the fuck you want with them. And we see now more than 200 people have just been dealt with, judge, jury, executioner style, right in the middle of the ocean. And all in the charge of, we are making America a better place. We are getting drugs off the street by stopping it there, right there in this tracks. But that's not the case. It's just clearly not the case. People are still doing drugs. There's still fentanyl out there. I can guarantee you. So I don't know what is the true aim, the true goal here. Is it just shock and awe? Are we just doing 1984 style entertainment? I hate to reference that book, but sometimes you gotta. Because that's what it feels like every time I look at one of these black and white fucking thumbnails and you're just blowing up people with night vision on. You know what I mean? And you're promising us they're narco terrorists, they're drug smugglers, they're part of some cartel or some shit, whatever. And anyone who does survive and you don't fucking double tap, because that's fucking happened before, you just whisk them away because you really can't charge them with anything. It's fucking grim. It's dark. It's ugh. So yeah, I just got to keep up with these fucking Joneses, I guess, man. What we do, atrocity after atrocity. But hey, we have one more story that I wanted to cover. I should have covered this last night, but I didn't. My bad once again. Real amateur hour around here. But yeah, let's go ahead and take our last break and we'll close it out with a fraud. I love seeing some fraud. And I mean, so does Kash Patel. So does the Trump administration with, our most wanted fraudsters. So in that regard, we are aligned. I've clowned them for this shit a little bit, but I can't lie. Every time they find one of these motherfuckers off their little board, I go, okay, I'll talk about it. You got me. Mm. All right. Last story comes from ABC 7. On your side. Thanks, ABC 7. FBI captures fugitive fraudster in Philippines after running $1.2 billion Medicare fraud scheme. That's a billion with a B. The FBI captured fugitive fraudster Herbert Leon Kimble in the Philippines and brought him back to the U.S. after he ran a $1.2 billion Medicare fraud scheme. Kimble, 60 years old, was placed on the FBI's new Most Wanted Fraudsters list after he failed to appear for his sentencing hearing in August of 2024, according to authorities. Fox News reported. In 2019, Kimble pleaded guilty to multiple federal offenses, including conspiracy to defraud the U.S., healthcare fraud, wire fraud, mail fraud, making false claims, and offering kickbacks and bribes. Dude, hell yeah, he's giving you the whole sampler. He's doing it all. I'm just saying, I don't want to say we love a con man, but I'm always fascinated. I am interested in these kind of stories. I cannot help but just like yap about it a little bit. Federal prosecutors said Kimble operated a healthcare fraud scheme of more than $1.2 billion in health and Medicare charges and affected thousands of beneficiaries, many of them elderly. His operation used call centers to steer patients toward medically unnecessary orthopedic braces, according to authorities. That sucks, man, because you're an older person. You're probably listening to the initial pitch and you go, that just doesn't make much sense, maybe in a lot of situations. But then you're literally just getting talked in a circle, talked down to maybe even, and you're just like, well, maybe I don't know. And then next thing you know, you're saying yes to this thing that you don't need and getting bilked, I guess maybe via your insurance or whatever, for a bunch of money. And that fucking sucks. As part of Kimble's plea deal from 2019 to 2024, he gave the federal government information that helped investigators arrest and prosecute others involved in the scheme, according to court filings, the state reported. The government charged 80 people with healthcare offenses based on Kimble's information, prosecutors said. So he wasn't alone in this. Crazy that this was like a whole ass operation. But I guess it would take that much to kind of funnel through and get this many people to rack up that kind of money. This wasn't just like a handful of motherfuckers, it looks like. Let's see here. However, Kimble failed to appear for his sentencing hearing in 2024. Kimble is a U.S. citizen but has family in the Philippines. In November of 2024, the U.S. District Judge Joe Anderson voided Kimble's plea deal, which made him eligible to receive a 5-year prison sentence, which is the maximum for charges to which he pleaded guilty. A federal grand jury in Columbia, South Carolina, last week indicted Kimble on 3 counts of failure to appear in court in 2024, according to the indictment. Let's see here. Is there anything else I really wanted to pull? No, just some quotables and yada yada yadas. What is it? JD Vance chimed in. I guess we'll read his little quote here. Our message is simple. If you defraud the American people, we will find you and we will bring you to justice. Kimble preyed on the elderly for years, costing taxpayers over $1 billion. Dude, can I take a pause here? Because our fucking president is over here doing like millions of dollars of damage just to a fucking reflecting pool. Not to say that negates, another motherfucker's fraud, but like, okay, go off, JD. The FBI catching Kimble is a direct result of the task force partnership with the FBI. Yeah, whatever. What the fuck ever. Like, I'm glad they got this guy. Obviously it's fuckery to be scamming on elderly people, taking advantage of them, taking advantage of anyone. Fuck that. If you've ever been fucking scammed, it fucking feels bad, or hustled, whatever. Like, it's some shit that you just don't forget. And I think whenever you mentally go back to it, you just feel bad. You just feel a little sad. You get a little mad, right? Like, so I'm sure, my dear listeners, you can relate to that feeling. So obviously, Tomato Town for Kimble. Fuck this guy. But it's just so funny to hear, motherfuckers who are also enabling fraud at literally for the highest level of government talking about this shit. Like, they're doing us a fucking favor. Like, okay, man. Yeah, one more off the board. Whatever. So yeah, that's it. That's all I have for today. And I gotta say, I haven't winced, haven't said owie. I feel a little pain, little twinges, but overall we're good. And also on my upper back and my neck, still a little stiff, but overall we're feeling good. We're making it back, guys. We're coming back. We're good. The road to recovery. I don't know, whatever. That's the episode. That's all we have for today. That's all I got to yap about. If you'd like to help out, support the effort, I do have a Patreon. Patreon.com/News. Become a newsie today. Roll call is coming up. I plug a project. I don't know. Say your name on the podcast. pretty much, a little thank you for, helping out the effort. That's the thing. Free ways to hit me up at xanus1@gmail.com. Feel free to follow me or the podcast on any of the socials. Subscribe to the YouTube, follow on TikTok, follow on Spotify, follow on Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to listen. Leave a like, leave a cool comment. Sharing is caring. 5 stars on Spotify, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts are always appreciated. But if you don't do that, you don't have to. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I guess also before I sign off, and I'm doing this at the very end, I forgot yesterday, Father's Day. That's kind of a bit of that's a day for me to be thinking about and dwelling on in its own way. Longtime listeners know, but happy belated Father's Day. To the daddy-os out there, if you've got a kiddo and you're a listener, thank you for being a good one, a real one. If you've got your papas out there, your daddy-os out there, give them a hug. Tell them you love them, and hopefully they're receptive to that. I don't know. I don't want to get too whatever. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for being a friend, and hopefully I see you soon for some more good news. I love ya. Bye bye. Mwah.